Hey, how are you today? This is Josh Patrick, and you're at Cracking the Cash Flow Code. And my guest today is Joshua Page. He is the owner of JP Electric and Sons. But more importantly, for today's conversation, he's written an interesting children's book called What Does Your Daddy Do? And before we start the recording, Josh and I are on the same page on this. So I want to bring Josh in and we can start the conversation, and you'll find out what we're on the same page about. Hey, Josh, how are you today?
Great, great. Thank you for having me, Josh. I really, really appreciate it.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I've been looking forward to this because your topic is something that's near and dear into my heart and a real pet peeve of mine. I happen to be a college graduate and I went into a blue collar business. And lucky enough, I grew the business fast enough so I didn't have to do the blue collar work because I was terrible at it. But the truth is, we have way too many kids being pushed towards college, and they should be pushed towards the trades, in my opinion. And I know you have an opinion about that. So, what are your thoughts about that, Joshua?
Yeah, so I guess for to really give you my thoughts, I'd have to start a little bit on the backstory of where I came from and why I chose the trades, because I bet you it's not what everyone is thinking on how people end up in the trades. You know, their father was an electrician, or their uncle was a plumber. My business is JP Electric and Son, but I am the JP. My son is now 13. He was uh, what, 2 years old at the time. So everyone thinks that I'm the son, but I'm not. I'm the one that actually started the company. But this goes all the way back to when I was 13 years old. I lost my mother to a brain tumor. My mother was 37 years old. My parents were divorced, and she left at 37. I was 13. I was forced to go live with my dad, who I only visited every other weekend since I was 2 years old. And I hated school. I was a C&D student and a proud C&D student. I was always getting into trouble. I just didn't fit the mold. And mom never had money for college, and I never wanted to go to college. But I found out about a trade school that you only had to go to school 2 weeks out of the month, and the other 2 weeks were in academics. So I said, sign me up. Now, growing up, I always liked the animatronics and the makeup. I remember going to Disney World with my mom and seeing the Pirates of the Caribbean and the pirates coming to life. So that's what I thought I was going to do when I grew up. So I went to trade school for cosmetology. Now, once I got into the trade and figured out what cosmetology was all about, I couldn't picture myself doing French tips, French braids, and manicures for the rest of my life. So I said, okay, cosmetology is not what I'm going to do. I really like plumbing, but I failed out of plumbing. I did not excel in that. They wouldn't allow me in, even in the trade. And I had a lot of friends that went into electrical. It's the only reason why I got in there. High school is not easy. I was suspended my freshman year, my sophomore year, my junior year. I had summer school for electrical related my sophomore year. I ran away from my dad's house and ended up living with my aunt to finish out my high school career. It wasn't until senior year that I really smartened up and said, I have to figure life out, right? Mom has passed away. I don't live with my dad or even get along with him. I live with my aunt. I got to figure things out. So it took me till senior year to really get going and say, you know what, I've got to do this trade thing. I've got to do electrical. I have to figure this thing out. And grades, I was still a C&D student. And there's a lot of math in electrical and a lot of things that you got to be really smart on. And I just wasn't. I struggled all the time. So that is how I got into the trade. Now, it's probably, like I said in the beginning, it's not typical of how you get into the trade, but that's how I got into it. And once I really started working, I really I really fell in love with the trade. And I think that was because it was a sense of pride that you could build something with your own hands, stand back and look at something that you just did. So for me, fast forward to where we're at now and why I think college is not the only option is because I've watched over the years so many parents pushing their kids towards college. The conversation always goes something like this: oh, you don't know what you want to do in life, or you don't know what you're going to do after high school? Just go to college, take some night classes, you'll figure it out. And those kids, they remind me a lot of me. We were confused. I didn't fit the mold. I didn't know where to really belong. I was the one that was always making forts in the woods growing up. I was the one climbing trees. I was the one taking crickets underneath a microscope and trying to see what their bodies did and just trying to always analyze things and figure things out. But I had to touch them. I was now I realize I was very kinesthetic growing up and very visual. When teachers would talk to me, I would zone them out. But if they drew something on the board or built something, I learned a lot faster.
So,
And I
so
think,
Josh,
yep,
let's move the conversation towards what some folks might want to know about, why are the trades more important? I have a question for you, though.
yeah,
When I had my food service company, we put a statistical quality control program in, and we had a bunch of folks. In fact, I had a mechanic that had an eighth grade education, great mechanic, no education. And everyone told me I was wasting my time trying to teach these guys statistics because it was too complicated.
mm-hmm,
And what I learned was it wasn't too complicated. It was relevant to what the work they were doing. It was
mm-hmm.
relevant. They learned it. Did you find that was true with you?
Well, again, going back to, specifically about me, and I think a lot of the tradespeople out there is we're very kinesthetic and we're very visual learners. So when teachers and parents talk to the tradespeople, people like me, we don't learn that way. We learn different than others. So the kids that are doing really well growing up in the trades is the kids who are fixing their motorcycles or climbing trees or fixing things or Legos. Those are the ones that excel in the trades. I always ask any new apprentice that comes in, what did you do growing up? And I can know immediately if they're going to work out really well. And I think the parents, they try to push everyone into college because that's what they think is going to be the best future, or that's what they should have done when they were younger. But that's not the
Okay,
correct
so
way.
so let's take a look. How many people do you have in your company now, Josh?
So we have 15 right now.
Okay, so that's a reasonably good size electrical contracting firm.
Yep.
Especially if you're doing homework. If you're doing commercial, you'd be much bigger, most likely.
Hmm.
And you had to learn a bunch of business skills. And you probably started off wiring stuff yourself, working as an electrician for somebody else, I assume.
Yep. Yep.
And when you were working for somebody else, what were you getting paid?
So back then, this was over 12, 15 years ago. I was getting paid 26.50 an hour as an electrician.
Okay, so that's about 42 to $50,000,
Hmm.
somewhere in that range.
Yep.
What I'm finding today is that a good electrician, if they're licensed, is between 75 and $90,000 before a bonus they might be getting.
Yeah.
Would you
Yeah.
say that's
You're right
about
about
the,
there.
yeah, right about there? Because, I have a couple of clients that are always, I mean, when an electrician becomes available, whether they need him or not, they hire him because they know that there aren't enough electricians out there and they're just warehousing people because they're growing their company. Is
Absolutely.
that is that something that you find yourself doing?
So the average age of an electrician in Massachusetts right now is 55, and the average age of a plumber is 57. Nationwide, it's about 40 and 43. No, excuse me, 43 years old for an electrician, 45 for a plumber. So there's a lot of electricians that have retired, especially since COVID. There's a
Yeah.
lot of older generation, and there's not a lot of new generation coming up. The churn is there, and I've been seeing this for the last 5 to 10 years. And even a wire inspector maybe 2 years ago said, Josh, pretty soon scheduling an electrician is going to be like getting a physical at your doctor's. You need an outlet replaced? Okay, we'll see you in 9 months, because there's just not going to be enough tradespeople. And this is true for electricians, plumbers, really anything that's licensed, but you'll see it across the board. Carpenters are hard to find, general contractors, painters. Um, I think we got such a bad rep over the years that just compiled and compiled and compiled that everyone thinks You go to college and your world will be solved. Like you'll never have to worry about anything. And blue collar and the people that work in your house are looked down upon, right? Those are the people we hire. We don't want to be them. But it takes a certain set of person and skill set to do what we do. And there's a lot of kids out there, and I don't think they're given the correct opportunity by the school system, by their guidance counselors, by their parents. They're just not fit for college, and that's okay.
And what happens a lot of times, I mean, this is my son. My son was, kind of a goof off in high school. And we decided homework was optional. And somehow or other, he got his teachers not to give him Fs. He only got Cs and Ds. UVM, University of Vermont, accepted him on a contingency basis. And he decided, well, screw that, I'm going to join the Army. Well, I'll show UVM. And he became one of the highest trained medics in the U.S. Army. Now, it took him till he was 24, 25, or 26 years old to show even a little bit of maturity about learning stuff. And he finally got a college degree in the Army. Now he's going for a master's degree. So a
Wow.
lot of folks will, they'll mature slower. Now, when he gets out, his intention is not to go sit behind a desk. As far as he's concerned, flying a desk is about the last thing in the world he wants to do. He'll do something with emergency medical management. He's going to get paid probably somewhere between $150,000 and $200,000 a year because of his training.
Amazing.
So this is a kid who, didn't get a college degree till he was 35. And a college degree is something that he just got because he thought it'd be a good idea for afterwards. And he's going to get paid a lot of money by somebody to become a relatively blue collar teacher,
Absolutely.
which
Good for him.
which is is great for him and it's great for his industry that he's in.
Absolutely.
The same thing for you. So you're in Massachusetts, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so here's the problem I see with Northeast schools, and I live in Vermont, so we have a similar issue. Is that yeah, we do have technical skills, but those kids are always sort of shuttled off to the side. They're not treated as first class students like the college, the kids that might get into Harvard or Princeton. And that's really a bad thing. And it's bad for two reasons, in my opinion. One is that we're not getting enough kids moved into the trades that should be there in the first place. And they shouldn't even be trying to do a college track. They should be way happier if they're not. So, what my wife and I would call the scurvy elephant, she was a middle school substitute teacher for years, and she loved the bad middle schoolers. Now, those kids, almost all of them, should be given the opportunity to go into the trades. Not pushed, but given the opportunity.
Yes.
And I think that's the problem is that we push kids aside and say, well, the college kids are going to support these kids. No, they're not. I mean, some of them, yes, but most of them, you go out and you work on a road crew, for example, you learn how to drive that heavy equipment. My bet is you're making $75,000 to $100,000 a year.
Mm-hmm. 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 Agreed.
And frankly, my daughter has a college degree, and that's about what she makes.
Yeah.
And she's been working at it for 30 years now. So,
No, I agree. My local trade school that I attended, if I tried to get in right now with the grades and attendance and my attitude the way that I had it back then, you wouldn't be allowed. Now it's the perfect A students, the kids who sit there with their hands clasped together in their lap, the perfect attendance. They want them. And I'm constantly talking to them saying, this isn't right. You're accepting the wrong kids. You're accepting, let's say, 35 to 36 kids in the electrical shop, and maybe six of them are going to become electricians. So the rest of them, you just wasted all of that education, all that taxpayer dollars for nothing. They're either going to go to college and not even do anything with electrical, or they're just going to go out and get a regular job. Who knows? But they're not going to become electricians or plumbers or carpenters. So what's the point?
so, so Josh, I have a question for you. There's a zillion community colleges where people in their, are 25 to 30 will go back to school to get an associate's degree. Why aren't there trade schools that are attached to these community colleges? So kids who are out in the workforce for 3 or 4 years and realize that, hey, there's this opportunity there. They should be, I mean, trade schools are great in high school. I get that. For some kids that will work really well. But in my opinion, they would be way more valuable as post high school experiences for kids who are basically in their mid 20s and have figured out my life's not working out great. If I do this, it'll likely be better. And on top of that, I'd like to do it.
So I've got a two-part answer to that. But I want to ask you, how did you figure out what you want to do in life? How did you figure out that you were going to go to college and do what you wanted to do?
It was the path of least resistance most of the time for me. But I would have been a terrible tradesman. I can't eat. There's a rule in our house: Josh should not ever hold a tool because I screw it up. So I would have been a terrible tradesman. I was just it was a whole confluence of issues, but frankly, I went back to school to be a lawyer. Decided lawyers had defend guilty people. I didn't want to do that. Looked at the family business, path of least resistance. Got into a huge fight with my father. Broke off, bought a piece of the business, and grew it from there. So that's a short version of a long story.
Gotcha, gotcha.
But I knew nothing about business. You knew nothing about business. You had to learn all this stuff. And frankly, what they teach in business school is completely irrelevant for a small business.
Mm,
And our business was 90 people that we grew it to, and it still was completely irrelevant for our business, what they
mm,
taught in B
mm.
school.
Yeah.
And we don't have the resources to do the crap they teach people to do. We have to do it on the back of an envelope.
Yeah.
And but the thing that I really have noticed in the trades is that we're teaching kids, we're trying to funnel people too early. And the whole community college system is developed for people going back to school, essentially. We should have, in my opinion, trade schools that are attached to community colleges and do the same thing.
So here's my answers. Number one, they do have trade schools after high school. Sometimes they're not attached to the community college, but I can't think of the names right now. But there's special schools that'll teach you how to become an
Yeah, they're
electrician,
for
teach you how to be a plumber.
they're for profit schools like ITT, and
Exactly.
the problem with that educational model is they don't graduate kids. They take their money and they don't learn anything,
So
and
that's where
it's
I was
very
getting to,
expensive.
because
And it's
because
very
some of
expensive.
these schools are 45 to 50,000 dollars a year, and they might spend 2 hours watching the instructor bend pipe, and that's all. And they learn about a little bit of code, a little bit on wire, and then they come to me and they want 60, $70,000 a year. And I'm like, you didn't learn anything. You just wasted your money, your parents' money, whoever's money it was. They just wasted it. So I think those are a huge waste of time. Here's the other problem is that growing up, did you know what an electrician did? Or a plumber or a roofer or a carpenter? Did you even know that those jobs existed? Or was it, I know what a doctor does, I know what a cop, a policeman, fireman. Did you know anything about the trades
Yeah,
growing up?
yeah, I did. Well, I grew up in a blue collar business, so of course I did. We
Okay.
had mechanics. We had people who filled vending machines. We had people working our commissary. We had all sorts of people that did blue collar work, and we were carpenters and that built stuff at our house. Of course I did.
So I think a lot of kids don't. They just don't. Their parents don't talk about it. Maybe their parents have hired them, but they weren't at the house and they were working. They don't have um, uncles or grandparents or anything to mentor them or to look up to them. So I think a lot of kids growing up just don't even know these jobs exist. So
Well,
why
that's the
at
school.
20,
That's the school. That's the school's fault and our guidance counselor's fault.
100%?
We should be talking about all options, not just college options in school.
That's the point of this conversation right here, really, is college is not the only option, but I don't think kids know enough about, hey, what does a roofer do? I know there's a roof over my head, like what is a shingle? Like what is a flat? They have no clue. So at 20, 21 years old, are you all of a sudden going to say, hey, you know what? I'm going to be an electrician. That looks pretty cool. Probably not. Unless you were friends, you had a friend that became an electrician or wanted to be an electrician, or a friend's father, or someone was talking to you. I don't even think that comes into their minds. Their only mindset is, I'm going to get a job, I'm going to join the military, or I don't know what to do, I'll go to college. And I don't think they know about these occupations. And that's why I wrote the book, was to plant the seed in the young mind, because I don't think kids really know what other occupations are in the trades.
Yeah, well, I think that you're absolutely correct about that. And the challenge, in my opinion, is we need to bring the trades onto the same level as a college track. And that's an educational problem. So we only have a few minutes left, Josh. So if you were to give your peers in the trades who own small electrical contractors, painting, landscaping companies, what advice would you be giving these owners today?
In terms of the trades or just in general?
In terms of the trades,
In terms
I
of the
mean, their
trades,
biggest, yeah, when I talk to guys like you, the number one problem I've been hearing for the last 3 years, I can't get good people. So if that's true, we as business owners, blue collar business owners, need to be taking some action. And what action would you recommend? I know what I would recommend.
you have to grow them. You have to hire young. You have to mentor these kids, show them the trades, show them how to become an electrician, how to be a painter, how to be a carpenter, and grow them up in the company. And that way you have them to where you want them and you continue building it. I think that's their only way. There is no 45-year-old, 50-year-old electrician waiting to get hired by me right now. He's not. There's no
Yeah,
30-year-old. There's no 25-year-old. There's a 20-year-old kid walking around out there with his hands in his pockets. He doesn't know what to do, but he might be the next best electrician or plumber. And he's just waiting for someone to grab his shoulder and say, come with me. I'll teach you the trade. That is, I
that
think, what
is
we need to do.
that's something that I think you have to do that right now. I don't think there's a choice for it. There's something else you should do, in my opinion. I hate the word should, but I would say need to do, which is everybody has trade associations. You have a trade association, the painters have trade associations, the carpenters have trade associations. Get involved in your trade association and bang the drum that your trade association needs to hire lobbyists. And you need to get down to your state legislators and you need to start talking to them about the educational system and not go to your local school board, because high school is not where it's at, in my opinion.
Yeah,
It's really the community colleges where it's at. And we need to change how community colleges work. And they need to have trade training. It takes people through the apprenticeship program while they're in school at a community college rate in community colleges. Our society needs it. We need it. It's only going to happen as we as business owners get down there and lobby. And I can tell you from personal experience, lobbying works. Your legislators listen to you at a level of 10 to 20 times more than they do a professional paid lobbyist. But you need to do both.
I agree. I agree with that.
So, Josh, I really appreciate having you on the show. Unfortunately, I talk too much and we're out of time. So,
No problem. This is great.
so
I
how
really
would
appreciate
people?
the opportunity.
My pleasure. So, how would people find you? And tell us a little bit about your book for about a minute or
Yeah,
so.
so the book is What Does Your Daddy Do? It's based on third to sixth graders reading level. Um, it's career week at school. One of the kids doesn't know what his dad does, and the teacher wants to know. So he goes home and finds out his dad is an electrician and all the cool things that an electrician does. And it's just planting the seed in the young mind about the other opportunities, not pushing them towards the trade. It's just giving them an opportunity so they learn about the trades. You can find it on Amazon. You can find it on Barnes and Noble. Leominster Barnes and Noble has it on the shelf, but either online, Amazon online. And I appreciate the opportunity. And hopefully, this book will get in the hands of kids across the country.
Cool. And I've got two things I want you to do, and this is the 372nd or third time I've asked you to do this, which is go to wherever you're listening to this podcast, give us an honest rating and review. And while you're there, you can subscribe. You'll find lots of interesting conversations like Josh and I just had. And the second thing is I've been running, a newsletter for 45 years. It's been weekly for, I think, 18 or 19 years now. And it's electronic. It's really easy to get. You just go to www.sustainablebusiness.co/newsletter and give me your first name and your email address. And Tuesday morning at 9 o'clock, you'll have our email. Again, that's www.sustainablebusiness.co/newsletter, first name and email address, and we'll be talking to you soon. Hey, this is Josh Patrick. You're with Joshua Page. You're at Cracking the Cash Flow Code. Thanks a lot for stopping by. I hope to see you back here